I went and saw Jordan Peele's new film last night, Nope.
Oh yeah, what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I really liked it.
Okay, it's been getting mixed reviews.
In the same way that I did not like Maverick because I think it just delivered everything that, you know, everyone seems to love at the moment. It's like Nope tries to do the complete opposite. Like it's definitely like a tentpole film, and it's trying to be, you know, a spectacle movie. But I think Jordan Peele makes a deliberate attempt to give you something that you haven't seen before. Like he's trying to subvert kind of expectations and stuff. And I loved it. Like coming off the back of Top Gun Maverick, where I felt like everything was so spoon fed and like, God, like stop, like seeing Top Gun Maverick is like having someone sitting next to you, elbowing you in the ribs saying, hey, remember this bit? Hey, do you remember this bit? Hey, remember that? Remember this? You know, when he says that, remember this? Whereas Nope is more like, hey, we're just going to throw a bunch of shit on the screen and we're not going to explain it. And you try and work out what we're saying or what it is. And we're not even really going to tell you what the end of the film is. There's going to be no exposition. There's going to be no moment where someone comes out and says, well, this is what's been going on the whole time. You just work it out. There's some metaphor and symbolism and stuff. So I loved it. Like, but then
Is that how they came up with the movie when they were pitching it? And the studio head's like, so what's the ending of the movie? Is it going to have an ending? No. Is it going to have a plot that everyone can follow? No. Is it going to have any popular superhero IP that we already own? No.
Well, this is just going to sound like I'm the biggest, you know, bleeding heart lefty SJW. But the fact of the matter is, there was no lead character that was like a straight white man. Like, you know,
okay.
The two lead characters are African American.
How will I relate to it, though?
One of them's
how can I actually go and see this movie and relate to it if there's not like a straight white man in it?
But it's just like, thank God, like that you're seeing stories and perspectives on like a mainstream movie from a different point of view. And then, like, even someone was saying to me last week, because I was talking about how great Prey was, and it's like, oh yeah, did you know that there's like 5 films that are all like about indigenous cultures that are like the top 5 films in the world right now, and then, you know, Squid Game was last year's biggest TV show. And it's like, oh, well, I guess that is the reaction to the fan service we've been talking about. There is kind of like an alternative being offered up, but maybe it's just not, it hasn't sort of like captured, well, maybe Squid Game was a bit of a phenomenon, but hasn't sort of infiltrated as widely as like Marvel or something like that.
Well, what we might be seeing is that the Hollywood, you know, version, like, you know, the cultural imperialist Hollywood version of what movies and entertainment are. Yeah, now that the barriers are down, particularly with streaming services and us being able to, like, I saw, I've only watched about the first 15 minutes, but it's a Bollywood film called RRR. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, it's meant to be amazing.
Oh my God. Someone sent me just a link. I don't know if it's available yet, whether it's at the movies or whether it's on streamers yet. I haven't had a chance. Just a friend of mine was like, just watch this 15 minutes and tell me you don't want to see this movie. And I watched the 15 minutes and I was like, that 15 minutes is better than most movies that I have seen recently. It was so entertaining. It's like this, I mean, I don't even know, like it's singing and dancing, but also like an action sort of superhero Marvel. Like, I mean, I honestly, I don't really know what the movie is. I only saw like a little bit of it, but it looks fucking amazing. And I think that you're right. That's where you're going to see it. You're going to see it coming out of like South Korea, or you're going to see it, people, you know, obviously the Scandinavian, you know, murder dramas and those sort of things have been big for a while. And the internationalization of what, there was that bank heist show that was very popular. That was I didn't see, but everybody seemed to love. And again, you know, different sort of art from different countries. So maybe what you'll see is Hollywood becomes McDonald's. You know, it's your big, you know, that's what that's going to be. But maybe the rest of the world's going to provide what you're talking about.
That toxic fanboy culture, which has said you can't have, you know, black stormtroopers and, you know, you can't have girl superheroes, and how's an indigenous Native American girl going to take down a predator when, you know, an army of commandos couldn't do it, forgetting that it's all made up. None of it really happened. But if that is like, if you're going to follow that logic to its end, then okay, sure. You don't want us to be in that genre. We'll just go make our own films, and those films will do well because there'll be an appetite for them. Because like after I watched Prey, I did go to see what people were saying online, and that amongst that kind of, you know, rusted on old school fanboy comic book nerd, it was like, oh my God, like they're forcing this political correctness down our throat. And it's like, I don't understand, like, your protection of these characters in this franchise. You know, it's the same way when Fury Road came out and people were like, oh God, like Max is this bumbling idiot. And it's like, they're just they're just changing the character in the same way, like in comic books, a different artist and a different writer comes in and they're like, oh, let's take this character and we'll turn it into a different genre. Like, isn't that what you want? Like, otherwise you are just getting fucking Top Gun Maverick. It's the same fucking story again and again and again. So maybe that's what we've done is when I say we, I'm talking about the collective. We've opened up a pathway now for it's like, okay, you're going to shut us out of genre. You're going to shut us out of comic books. We're just going to make our own thing. And then they'll come. The audience will come, which seems to be happening, which is good.
Yeah, well, the thing about like Fury Road, if you talk about, that's not a character stuck in time. You talk about Top Gun Maverick as being all these characters that are clearly stuck in this period of time, whereas like Max in Fury Road, he's not a bumbling idiot. Like, I know people like, you know, made that criticism, but he's clearly got severe PTSD, which is like what that character would have from like experiencing what that character had in the universe that you've created. Like, of course he would be. His nerves would be completely frayed and shot to hell on every level. And, you know, he just survives.
Yeah.
Constantly is just looking for a way to move on and survive. So it's just that character had moved on that people got mad about. But I think that, I mean, like you said, Jordan Peele, George Miller, there's going to be, you know, movie makers within the system, Christopher Nolan probably to a certain extent, who can still take all those big Hollywood tropes and, you know, capacities to make those movies and do something interesting with them. But you're also just going to see a lot of like really big, you know, I mean, essentially theme park rides that are masquerading as movies.
Yeah, well, I guess that'll be the twin streams, won't it? Is you'll have like people. It's in the same way that when reality TV started, everyone's like, "Oh God, like I can't wait for reality to die," and you know, no, that's not going to happen. Like it's its own genre now. It's created its own stream.
Like, it's a monster.
That's what it is now. So there will always be like Marvel movies and existing IP and stuff, but I guess it's like it's no longer exciting to me because I feel like whatever had not been done has been done now. And it's also like with the rise of visual effects as well, it's like we've seen everything. We've seen, you know, the world blow up. We've seen it freeze. You know, it's not like I would love to see this on camera because we've done it.
Yeah.
So now we have
seen someone fly realistically, like in a way that looks like a superhero. You're like, well, what else is there?
I mean, I've seen fucking deep fakes of Keanu Reeves and you know Tom Cruise doing karaoke and shit. Like, I mean, I'll believe anything. Like, so now it has to come back to story, and I think what I'm realizing it's like and I am by no means like an art house snob or anything like that, but just the fact that when I was watching Nope, I was like, I don't know where this is going, and I love it. Like I could sense in the cinema around me, and I did check the Rotten Tomatoes scores, which I think is always like a good. Like I think Nope has like 85% critics and then like 68% audience, which I think is a good sign because Fury Road was like 95% critic and like 50% audience. And I'm like, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a bit of Charlie. That's a bit of Charlie if you're right there. Because I think that the amount of times I've listened to people, especially with Fury Road, I'd sit on discussions or hear people talking about it where they're just like, it's just nothing happens. Like, there's, you know, it's just, there's no dialogue. They just drive from one place to the next. I'm like, if that is your deeper reading of the text, and that's fine. Like, I get it. It didn't appeal to you. You want Top Gun Maverick.
I mean, technically, that is what they did.
Yes.
You are right.
Yes.
They did indeed drive from one place to another and then actually back to the place that they came from in the first place. That is actually technically, I guess, if you're only looking at a Google Maps version of the movie, that is what happened.
I'm reading there's a book, I think it's called Blood, Sweat and Chrome, which is just like a collection of, it's the oral history of the making of Fury Road, and about halfway through it. So they interview everyone. And it's amazing, like, how many times they tried to get this movie up and how many times it fell over. But just the way that the unconventional way in which they put it together, like obviously everyone knows it was not scripted, it was storyboarded to begin with. But after they'd storyboarded and they were like, okay, well, we need to start building these vehicles in this world. So they started reaching out to like any artists that they could find online who work with like reappropriating things like sculptors and stuff like that. And so there's this one guy they're interviewing who was this like, sculptor who lived in Brooklyn. And he said, I just got this like phone call one day from some producer in Australia saying, hey man, like we're working on a new Mad Max film. Can we fly you out to Australia for 6 months and you can just build stuff? And he's like, it was the best fucking gig of my entire life. He's like, I was just in a warehouse. You go into this warehouse to be like 50 mechanics, 30 sculptors, and we're all just going out to junkyards every day and coming back and like, how can we turn these like 5 things into like a car or like, the canopy of a roof? And it's like that. I mean, to me, that sounds like the greatest creative experience ever.
Yeah. Yeah, but there must have been somebody in a studio who was like, we can just green screen all this shit, right?
Well, they talked about that. I mean, there's hilarious stories about the Doug Mitchell is George Miller's producer, and his number one talent, it seems to be like George wants to do one thing, and Doug would just go to Warner Brothers and say, yeah, we're going to do it, and then just not do it. And so like Warner Brothers like, we can't spend this much. We have to do it on green screen. So Warner Brothers wanted to shoot Fury Road on like a length of runway in an abandoned airport just with green screens. And so while like Doug Mitchell was agreeing to that, he was at the same time loading all the cars onto a ship and sending them to Africa. And so Warner Brothers just call him and go, we just got an invoice for $2 million from some freight company. Did you send all the vehicles to Africa? And he's like, oh yeah, geez, I guess we have.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to do? I guess we better shoot the film.
And they're on a boat to Africa now, so be a pity to not go to Africa to shoot this film, I suppose.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/TOFOP.